The Life of Dr. Bessel Kolk. By Jason J. Myers. Spring of 2023 at the University of Texas at Arlington. The U.S. fought Vietnam in the early 1960s. The United States has entered its fourth major war of the 20th century during a time when our military trained and protected the nation against communism. Many men died in Vietnam, but those who survived returned to the U.S. with post-traumatic stress disorder. A young doctor became intrigued in this new diagnosis and devoted to helping Vietnam soldiers come home. His name was Bessel Kolk. Bessel Kolk was born in the Netherlands in 1943. His family immigrated to the United States, and throughout college, he studied political science at the University of Hawaii. After completing his undergraduate degree, he earned his Ph.D. from the University of Chicago in 1970. In 1974, he completed his psychiatric residency at Harvard Medical School. After being employed at the Boston State Hospital, Kolk served as a psychiatrist at the Veterans Administration Outpatient Clinic in Boston. There, he developed a keen interest in the study of traumatic stress. Bessel Kolk was one of the most influential psychiatrists who worked to include traumatic stress in the DSM-3. In 1980, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, was formally designated and recognized as a distinct diagnosis in the DSM. During that time, a limited number of pharmaceutical drugs were available, but that all changed with the introduction of Prozac, the first SSRI, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Kolk was one of the most prominent psychiatrists in the 1990s who studied the effects of SSRIs on PTSD patients. After years of study, Kolk concluded that SSRIs, although effective, were not the answer to long-term care. So Kolk began studying a different approach and using non-conventional techniques to treat PTSD symptoms. Soon, Kolk realized that PTSD and its consequences are not limited to combat veterans. Kolk was also one of the foremost trauma researchers in the general population. Kolk concluded that everyone experiences trauma in their lives. Traumatic events frequently result in physiological changes, however, Kolk believed they also affect us physically. Kolk was one of the first psychiatrists to recognize that children who are physically and psychologically abused at an early age can experience similar symptoms as soldiers returning from war. Among the most prevalent indications of PTSD are feeling upset by things that remind you of what happened, nightmares, vivid memories, or flashbacks of the event, emotionally cut off from others, loss of interest, constantly on guard, irritated or angry outbursts, difficulty sleeping, trouble concentrating, and jumpy or easily startled. In the general population, numerous events can lead to a PTSD diagnosis. Here are a few instances. Involved in a car crash, raped or sexually assaulted, excessive abused, harassed or bullied. Any event in which you fear for your life. Violence, including military combat, a terrorist attack, or any violent assault. Seeing other people hurt or killed. Difficult jobs, such as emergency services, police officer, or armed forces. Natural disaster. Losing someone close to you. And life-threatening health diagnoses such as cancer. Kolk thought trauma profoundly influenced the limbic system and spent many years investigating it. Trauma triggers adrenaline and amygdala stress hormone release. The amygdala recalls how powerful and quick the experience made you feel. After a trauma, typical sensory experiences can activate the amygdala, re-releasing those chemicals and making it think daily occurrences are threatening. Trauma also affects the hippocampus, which helps stores memories. Kolk found that traumatic brain memories persist due to a substantial loss in hippocampal function. Finally, the prefrontal cortex suffers. The prefrontal brain and stress hormone system malfunction, causing anxiety, irritation, and heightened awareness. Our consciousness, reasoning, and word meanings are in the prefrontal cortex. After trauma, the prefrontal brain might shut down. Trauma causes the brain to become chaotic and overwhelmed while the body enters survival mode and switches off higher thinking and language processes. A deeply entrenched stress reaction results from a metabolic shutdown. After years of research, most psychologists understand PTSD's effects on the military and civilian populations. Most psychologists agree that trauma severely impacts brain regions but disagree on how to treat it. Two main PTSD treatments exist: bottom-up and top-down approaches. Prefrontal cortex treatment for PTSD starts top-down. That is, 1. Frontal lobe treatments change negative thinking patterns into positive ones by addressing thoughts and how the mind receives information. 2. This alters temporal lobe emotions and behavior. 3. The brain stem finishes with fewer bodily concerns, including lower heart rate, better breathing, better sleep, and more energy. Positive thinking leads to positive feelings and greater results. CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy is the most common therapy that employs this method. Dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive processing therapy, and prolonged exposure therapy are other top-down treatments. Vandercook thought that a bottom-up strategy to treating PTSD was more beneficial than a top-down one, which may benefit some. The bottom-up starts in the brain stem. It treats temporal lobe, emotions and memory, physical illnesses related to the experience. After identifying these feelings and emotions, our frontal brain uses all three areas to realize one thing: that their threat is old. They realize they are safe. Vandercook believed that these methods were better long-term therapies. One of the most important things Vandercook has done for trauma treatment is to develop different treatments focusing on the body's role in healing. These include yoga, meditation, eye movement desensitization, and neurofeedback, which retrains the brain by studying brain waves. These treatments have shown efficacy in reducing trauma-related symptoms and promoting recovery. Vandercook believed in using 6 types of therapies for treating PTSD. Number 1, psychotherapy. Psychotherapy, or talk therapy, treats numerous mental and emotional illnesses. Psychotherapy can alleviate persistent symptoms to promote function and recovery. The basics include recognizing the problem by looking back and understanding how a person got here. Vandercook felt we must identify the issue before fixing it. Number 2. EMDR. EMDR means eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It desensitizes individuals to mental health difficulties through eye movements. This approach requires precise eye motions while recalling traumatic memories. This relatively new method is shown to help those heal from trauma or other upsetting situations. Number 3. Yoga and meditation. After a painful memory, yoga therapy may help individuals return to normal sooner. Regular yoga practice may make the primitive brain more dynamically adaptable. Mindfulness meditation, a component of yoga, can reduce the size of amygdala and increase hippocampus levels. Number 4. Theater and movement. Reenacting traumatic events helps patients understand how their minds and body react to their current situation. Reenacting these experiences helps the mind and body recognize it's not real and they are in a safe place. Number 5. Neurofeedback, or reshaping the brain to new experiences. Neurofeedback is a biofeedback that uses brain waves and a response signal to teach people how to control their own brain processes. Neurofeedback generally gives audio or video input for the study. Finally, #5 psychedelics. Psychedelic medication treatment for PTSD is controversial but effective. Scientists think psilocybin, like SSRIs, will have effects beyond serotonin. They believe the medication modifies neuronal connections and can drastically lessen PTSD symptoms after a few doses. Vandercook advocates this treatment and is examining its effects today. Vandercook's 2014 book, The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Treatment of Trauma, sold over 2 million copies and stayed on the New York Times bestseller list. His book shows how PTSD affects everyone mentally and physically. He gives many therapies and discusses how they may promote PTSD rehabilitation, making him a must-read for future PTSD therapists. Dr. Bessel Vandercook is widely regarded as the leading expert on the effects of trauma on the brain, body, and nervous system. He was an innovator in using techniques that help calm the nervous system, enhance self-regulation, and root patients in the here and now. Vandercook is well versed in alternative therapies, having researched neurofeedback, EMDR, psychedelics, and yoga. The ideas in The Body Keeps the Score are fresh and beneficial for making sense of what goes on in our heads and our bodies and how that connection may be broken and restored. Thank you so much for listening to my lecture today. I hope you have learned more about Dr. Vandercook and his work in the field of PTSD. I highly recommend reading the book The Body Keeps the Score for more information about Dr. Vandercook and his research. Thank you so much, and have a great day.